I couldn't believe my ears. Sunday, during NBC's Meet the Press, President Trump credited himself for the strong economy in 2024 when Joe Biden was president, but then he blamed President Biden for a weak economy in 2025 when he was president. Now, I'm not so sure how the American people puts that together. In 2024, strong economy, he tries to take the credit. In 2025, when he's the president, he blames Joe Biden.
If you want to see what it looks like when a Wall Street billionaire turned political operative gets completely exposed on Capitol Hill, you need to watch this clip. New York Congressman Gregory Meeks just went absolutely nuclear on Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, in one of the most explosive House Financial Services Committee hearings we've seen all year. Meeks didn't just push back on the administration's catastrophic economic policies. He completely dismantled the intellectual fraud behind them. From exposing Trump's unconstitutional use of executive power to impose sweeping tariffs, to destroying the administration's hypocritical economic blame games, Meeks left Bessent stuttering, defensive, and looking like a partisan flunky. But it was the final 60 seconds, where Meeks brought up Donald Trump's atrocious track record as a businessman who defaulted on his own debts 6 different times, that left the room stunned. Let's break down this blistering cross-examination.
Mr. Bessent, I'm just a plain, simple man, the average, everyday American is looking at this hearing today. So can you tell me first, does trade deficits constitute a national emergency?
The hollowing out of the U.S.
No, just yes or no. Yes or no. Yes or no,
It's
sir.
a national emergency, sir.
It does. It does. You're telling me trade deficits equals a national or creates
Persistent and prolonged.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
And do you know also, sir, that for the last 4 decades, we've had trade deficits in the United States of America, and nobody said it was an emergency? Democratic and Republican presidents? You know what that says to me? That it's not an emergency because it hasn't been for 4 decades. It says to me that we should bring tariffs back to the United States Congress so that we can make that determination as the Constitution has said and not try to go around Congress. That's just unbelievable to me. Let me ask this question. Maybe they missed it. Who was the president and who has been the president since January 20th, 2025?
Donald J. Trump.
Okay. And who was the president in 2024?
One believes President Biden.
One believes? You one of those non-believers that the election, the American people didn't vote?
I am not.
You're not? You said one believes? Do you believe in the Constitution of the United States and it should be abided by?
I believe in the Constitution of the United States.
So you believe in it without any second thought. You don't have to think about it. You believe in it and you would abide by it. Is that correct?
I have and I do, sir.
Okay. But do you know that a president has said he may or may not, he don't know? Let me ask this question. I couldn't believe my ears. Sunday, during NBC's Meet the Press, President Trump credited himself for the strong economy in 2024 when Joe Biden was president, but then he blamed President Biden for a weak economy in 2025 when when he was president. Now, I'm not so sure how the American people puts that together. In 2024, strong economy, he tries to take the credit. In 2025, when he's the president, he blames Joe Biden. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't think it makes sense to most Americans. And I hope, Mr. Secretary, you're a businessman, it doesn't make sense to you either. It can't possibly make sense to you. Let me ask this question. If a government, say, look, Argentina, I remember when I came here, and Argentina kept failing to pay its debt. Not once or twice or three times. And we were all upset about it, and we said that they needed a host, somebody needed to take over their government, you know, somebody should help the president of Argentina. If the United States or didn't pay his debt or something like that, we'd be very upset about that if we couldn't pay our debt. I mean, that's one of our focuses. Is that not correct?
Sir, the United States will always meet its debt obligations.
Always. Well, let me ask you this. Donald Trump, the deal maker, and you didn't answer Ms. Velasquez's questions, no deals, although he said 3 weeks ago that there would be deals. But Donald Trump, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, but 6 times failed to pay his debts on his business and went bankrupt. And you're going to call that a good businessman?
The gentleman's time has
in that company.
expired. The gentleman's time has expired. The gentlewoman from Missouri, Ms. Wagner, the chair of our subcommittee on capital markets, is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will try to keep my...
The confrontation kicked off with Congressman Meeks adopting the persona of a plain, simple man representing the millions of average, everyday Americans watching at home. He immediately cornered Bessent on the administration's primary justification for its trade wars, asking a direct question: does a trade deficit constitute a formal national emergency? Bessent took the bait, claiming that prolonged trade deficits absolutely constitute an emergency. That's when Meeks sprung the trap. He reminded the Treasury Secretary that the United States has operated with a trade deficit for the last 4 consecutive decades under both Democratic and Republican presidents. Meeks pointed out the sheer absurdity of the claim, noting that if something has been standard economic reality for 40 years without collapsing the nation, it is by definition not an emergency. Meeks argued that the only real emergency here is the administration's blatant illegal attempt to bypass the U.S. Congress, violating the Constitution by stripping lawmakers of their authority over tariffs and taxes. Next, Meeks shifted his sights to the staggering cognitive dissonance and intellectual dishonesty defining the administration's economic narrative. He forced Bessent to state on the record who was president in 2024, Joe Biden, and who took office on January 20, 2025, Donald Trump. Meeks then cited Trump's recent appearance on NBC's Meet the Press, where Trump unironically credited himself for the historically strong booming economy of 2024 while Biden was in office, but then turned around and blamed Joe Biden for the weak stagnating economy of 2025, the very year Trump was actually in charge. Meeks stared down Bessent, declaring that this ridiculous double standard makes absolutely zero sense to the American public, and noting that as a seasoned businessman, Bessent knows it's an absolute farce. But the defining climax of the hearing came when Meeks dropped the ultimate hammer on the myth of Donald Trump as a financial mastermind. Meeks brought up the historical precedent of countries like Argentina failing to pay their debts, reminding the committee how Washington elites always demand structural takeovers for foreign governments that default. He asked Bessent if the United States should always honor its financial obligations, to which Bessent confidently replied that America always meets its debts. That is precisely when Meeks delivered the knockout blow. He looked directly at Bessent and brought up Trump's self-proclaimed status as the ultimate deal-maker. Meeks pointed out that despite all the big talk of making historic economic deals, the reality is that Donald Trump has filed for business bankruptcy not once, not twice, but 6 separate times. He aggressively asked Bessent how anyone could call a man who repeatedly failed to pay his debts and ran his own companies into the ground a good businessman, asking Bessent point-blank if he would ever dare risk investing his own capital into a company run by someone with that disastrous track record. Before Bessent could even gather his thoughts to cover for his boss, the gavel came down as Meeks' time expired, leaving the Treasury Secretary saved by the bell. Gregory Meeks did exactly what leadership looks like, speaking truth to power and exposing the absolute hypocrisy of an administration trying to tax everyday Americans through unconstitutional tariffs while rewriting economic history. When the Treasury Secretary is more focused on acting as a protective shield for the president's failed business history than defending the economic interests of American families, the public deserves to see it. What did you think of Congressman Meeks' absolute demolition of Scott Bessent? Did he completely expose the fraud behind the administration's tariff and economic policies? Or do you think Bessent was unfairly cornered? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. The mainstream corporate media is trying to bury this explosive exchange, so make sure to hit that like button and share this video to spread the truth. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dive oversight coverage. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.